Good evening, welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, an NDTV exclusive, a second Chinese enclave within Indian territory in Arunachal Pradesh. It's in an area not controlled by the Indian Army. But the fact that China now continues to build full-fledged enclaves in areas which lie well within the boundary defined by the Survey General of India, in parts of India, in this case Arunachal Pradesh, it's hugely problematic. This is our land, our territory. And it's not just in India. China has also constructed not one but 4 villages in Bhutanese territory. Another massive Salami slice-in operation there. But first, our exclusive report about the second Chinese enclave in Arunachal Pradesh. New satellite images accessed by NDTV show that China has constructed a second enclave or cluster of at least 60 buildings in Arunachal Pradesh. Now this lies 93 kilometers east of the China-constructed village in Arunachal, a big encroachment first reported by NDTV in January. This was confirmed by a US Pentagon report. But let's talk about the second enclave. Now this enclave that you see here did not exist in 2019 according to satellite images. A year later it can be seen. Let's make this more clear. The image you see is from March 2019. As you can see, there's nothing here, just snow, no enclave. Now compare March 2019 on your left with September this year on your right. The enclave of more than 64 structures has evidently been completed. So the big question, where exactly is this? What you see on your screens is Bharat Maps, a government-run online map service. Enter the coordinates of the village and the exact location shows up. The enclave is in the Shiomi district, a remote district of Arunachal Pradesh. Now the image you see here is actually the digital vector of the state of Arunachal Pradesh, downloaded from the Survey General of India at cost and superimposed onto Google Earth Pro. It's the official boundary. You can see the exact location here as well, which we've marked. Now these images show not just dozens of buildings, but also a structure with a flag of China painted on a rooftop, which we've highlighted there, large enough to be spotted by imaging satellites. The giant flag appears to assert a territorial claim to this area. Now, the enclave is located in an area where local geography makes access to this valley much more conducive from the Chinese side than from the Indian side. The area is separated by steep mountain ranges from Indian controlled territory. A photograph of this enclave was published in July by the Xinhua News Agency, the state-run press agency of the People's Republic of China. They've named it. It's called Kyungling. This is the very same place. Now, in a statement to NDTV, the Indian Army has said the location corresponding to the coordinates mentioned in your query, we asked them this query, lies to the north of the line of actual control in Chinese territory. But this statement does not refute the fact that the construction of this enclave seems to lie between the line of actual control and the international boundary. In other words, within Indian territory illegally occupied by China. Well, joining us now, Dr. Brahma Chelani, the strategic affairs expert. We're also joined by Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, the former Northern Army commander, General Raj Kadyan, former Deputy Chief of Army Staff, and Gaurav Vallabh, the spokesperson of the Congress Party as well.
Hello.
Brahma Chelani, let me come to you first. What is this all about? What is it that China is trying to achieve in these remote areas?
Well, first, congratulations, Vishnu, for exposing yet another Chinese border village to crop up. You have been disclosing how China is changing facts on the ground by building border villages or enclaves. This is great journalism.
Thank you.
Each new village is accompanied by planted settlers, roads, and military infrastructure. So it's not just one enclave or a village. It's the entire infrastructure, the militarized infrastructure that comes with the village. Step by step, China is changing ground realities by creating such militarized villages. In international law, civilian settlements are seen as evidence of a country's effective control over an area. This explains why China is creating artificial villages in treacherous Himalayan terrain just like its human-made islands in the middle of the South China Sea. In other words, China's terrestrial aggression in the Himalayas isn't much different than its blue water expansionism.
Yeah.
On land, like at sea, China often uses civilian resources, including herders and grazers, as the tip of the spear.
Right.
But once it brings in civilians to settle on contested land, its army gains full control of the area.
Right. General Huda, how important is it for us as a country to come out with a white paper or whatever it is, defining the line of actual control, defining all of the areas where the Chinese may have come in, to offer some sort of clarity, even if it is internally, because the Chinese may dispute this, where exactly the international boundary lies? How important is it for us to clarify this? Because there are so many questions on this entire issue.
So Vishnu, I agree with you that we need some clarity on this, and I think the government must come out, as you said, with some kind of a white paper. I just want to sort of introduce, one note of caution here, as far as the boundary in Arunachal Pradesh particularly is concerned. So the boundary is based on the McMahon line. We know that. It was defined actually on maps which were a scale of 8 miles to an inch. There wasn't great accuracy in 1914, and similarly, after independence, we have defined our boundary. The understanding, Vishnu, on ground is that the boundary must follow the watershed principle. And that's how people on ground are looking at it. And therefore, I think more than looking at how the boundary is defined on our maps, we should look at whether this village is beyond the watershed or not. And if it is beyond the watershed, then it lies in Chinese territory. Let me just say one brief point here. There are problems with how the boundary has been done by the Survey General of India. And we've had the Member of Parliament of Arunachal Pradesh, Mr. Gao, who has said that the way the boundary is defined, it actually doesn't reflect ground reality. So I would be a little cautious here, Vishnu, in saying that this village is actually in area claimed by India.
Right. General Kadyan, your views on this, because I would refer only to the External Affairs Ministry statement, which says that Chinese construction along the boundary with India or construction within India or Indian territory which is illegal is something which they have accepted, they are aware of. And if it is within the boundaries as stated by the Survey General of India, then it's illegal. Now, we can bring clarity on this, but the fact of the matter is the line between the line of actual control, which is what the army holds, and the international boundary as defined by the Survey General of India in their official maps, right? That's our land. Now, I know we don't occupy that, right? I mean, we've established that. The problem is that China doesn't care, right? It's our land, we believe it is ours, they just walk in. Yes, geography might favor them in this area. So just a few thoughts over there, General Kadyan, how do we approach this? It's not just this one area.
Vishnu, first of all, we have a grave problem. You have a neighbor stronger than us militarily, stronger economically, and bent upon harming India by grabbing our territory, whether it is Ladakh or Himachal or other areas. And they will continue, there is no doubt. Secondly, in 1914, when this line was identified, actually that time the Britishers did not take it seriously because their worry was Russia. China didn't matter that time. So it was marked by a thick China graph pencil on maybe a quarter-inch map. So it covers a few kilometers. So there can be a chance of misunderstanding. Third point is that, as El Huda said, normally in mountains, the boundary follows a watershed. But sometimes the hills are not so conical, they are flat on top. And it leads to ambiguity where exactly is the line. So unless it is marked on the ground, which the Britishers had no interest in marking, they should have marked, but they didn't because they had no threat from Chinese side. Now, third point is that it is unthinkable that the government is not aware of these constructions. Even if we say that it has been a post occupied by them since 1959, if it was a post, then our corresponding post must be there in front of it. And the people would have seen the construction. So even if it is constructing a village in what they think is their area, it changes the status quo.
Exactly.
Because that is not the understanding that you can't have a habitation. So government needs to come clean. Today you can't hide the facts.
No, you
We
can't.
can keep saying Ladakh where there is no incursion, but satellite won't let you get away. So government needs to publish a white paper or comes clean, take the country in confidence. It is not a problem of Congress or BJP, it is a national issue.
Right.
And nobody in the world is interested in these barren heights in Ladakh and all. It is our problem.
Yeah.
We have to tackle.
Yeah. Gaurav Vallabh, how would you actually see this? A lot of people would suggest that when this was happening in 2019, 2020, and in fact even after that, if you look at the Doklam area where we appeared to win that face-off against China, they went behind our back. They started constructing in Bhutanese territory in the direction of the Siliguri corridor, number one. Number two, we've seen this entire face-off in Ladakh and our territory being occupied illegally in places. And number three, at least two enclaves, right, in Arunachal Pradesh. How should the government not have said that, look, we have this problem? Should we not have internationalized this issue and said, this is our land, this is what they've done? Why does it need a scoop from a journalist to bring out this truth?
Vishnu, first thing we have to understand that why suddenly we are seeing events after events, actions after actions, whether on the Bhutanese soil, whether in the Arunachal Pradesh, village after village. Why this is happening? You have to understand. Because what is our response to China? We are giving clean chit to China. Na koi ghusa hai, na koi ghusa hua hai. We are not naming China. We are using synonyms. Vistarvati, 56 inch, Lal Aag, Jhula diplomacy. And we want why Prime Minister and Government of India is silent on this. We are with the government of our country because we are not in agreement to give even 1 inch of our land to China. And here 64 buildings are constructed on our soil. And government is silent. Prime Minister is silent. Why government is not responding to the verbal, geographical, military and strategic aggression of China? Why Prime Minister is silent? Why are we tolerating all-round aggression of China? Why? What is the reason? What is the diplomatic answer to this? What is the military answer to this? What is the government's answer to this? And I would like to give an example. During the BRICS Nation Summit, Russia was naming China, but Prime Minister of our country is not naming China.
Right.
Prime Minister of our country is not naming Afghanistan. Why? What is the problem? And we are not asking.
All right, I take the point that you're. I take the point, Gaurav. I take the point that you're mentioning that there needs to be a greater transparency in this. Brahma Chelani, it's a strange situation because on the one hand we have close economic ties with China. I don't know what your views are on this, but I would suggest that you can't shut it down entirely because we are too closely involved economically. On the other hand, you've got this profound strategic problem. So therefore, how do you balance the two?
It's a good question. Even though the village might have come up in Chinese-controlled territory, the fact is that such a drive by China to populate previously uninhabited areas carries important security implications for India. Such villages not only cement the Chinese land capture, they will also aid China's intelligence gathering and possible cross-border missions in the future. If you look at Pakistan, Pakistan likewise uses border villages on its side of the line of control as staging grounds for cross-border infiltration of terrorists. In fact, as India has discovered, the populated border areas from Myanmar to Pakistan are from where terrorists, insurgents, or saboteurs sneak in. And also, let's be clear about the significance of the area where this new enclave has come up. The village has The village is located in the same county where China is building a super dam on the Brahmaputra, a dam that will be much larger than the Three Gorges Dam, which currently is the world's largest dam. This is also the same area which President Xi Jinping secretly visited in July. His visit was disclosed by the Chinese state media only after he returned home from Tibet. In fact, Xi Jinping began his Tibet visit with an overnight stopover at a forward PLA base located just close to this very border village that you have disclosed. Simply put, the new village has come up in an area that China highly values as arming it with military advantage over India. But I have a bigger question. Why is India always at the receiving end? No matter which government is in power in New Delhi. Nothing stops India from building border villages. Why don't we build border villages? Nothing stops India from engaging in salami slicing, or in psychological manipulation and disinformation, or in lawfare. For example, misusing law for political ends, as China does. India should not be at the receiving end always.
Yeah.
We need a determined counteroffensive. Without such a counter, China will continue to employ its South China Sea tactics to unilaterally change facts on the ground, presenting a territorial and military fait accompli to India, step by step.
Yep. No, I take that point. And General Huda, just a last question to you, sir. What in the realm of realistic options do we actually have? I'm not suggesting some sort of crazy wargaming scenario, but when it comes to this sort of land grab, what is a measured response which might mean military action, which might mean some sort of more coercive forms of diplomacy? Do we have these options at all?
So Vishnu, this is I think an important question that you raised. How is it that we are going to deter China from doing what it is doing? And it's not a matter of one village. You will find villages coming up. They're talking about 600 odd villages. But the larger issue of how do we deter China? And to me, there are two ways. One is through incentive, and the second is through a threat of punishment. And I think we have to employ both these options. My fear is, the approach that we seem to have adopted, there is no incentivization in terms of political, diplomatic sort of approaches.
Yeah.
And while we are building our infrastructure and capability along the border and sort of matching the Chinese, I also don't see any sort of threat of punishment that is going to, bring China to say, let's cool the situation down along the LAC. Let's look at, some kind of wire media by which both the countries can move together. So, Vishnu, in my view, I think we need to look at a sort of a long-term strategy and approach of how we are going to deal with China.
Sure. All right. Well, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us this evening, sharing your views. We've got Sim Tak with us. Sim is one of the finest analysts in the world who looks very closely at the entire China issue. Thanks very much, Sim, for being with us. Do you believe that this new Chinese enclave lies within the territory of India?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to make a judgment on who is correct about where the border exactly lies. But if we are taking as a reference the official survey of India border outlines based on the old McMahon line, when you look at that data, that indeed shows that the village is within an area that is part of the Indian territory according to the survey.
Now, this area itself is geographically more accessible from China, right?
Exactly. And I think that's where the problem here lies for India and the opportunity for China, where obviously this valley where the village is located is connected directly to nearby Chinese communities on a nearby river, So it's very easy to move between those points in China and this village. On the other hand, if you look at it from the Indian side of the border, there is a big mountain range that effectively separates the location of this village from the rest of Indian territory. So that makes it very difficult for, of course, India to have any kind of inhabitation or economic activity in this area, which China is now doing. And I think, to make that very exact point, to show that, hey, these areas geographically, we think they belong to China because of that connectivity that we have and that we will, in fact, exploit by building these villages.
Now, one of the images shows a Chinese flag painted on top of a building. We'll try and pull that picture out. Is this a claim for territory? Because we've seen that elsewhere, for example, on this on the north bank of the Pangong Lake as well, several months back. They didn't color it then. Here they've actually colored it, a Chinese flag.
Yes, I think this is very clearly a symbol that China is placing out there. Because of the observation deck that is also located there, that symbol is probably somewhat intended towards a Chinese public to effectively tell the Chinese public, this is China. This is how far we are drawing our borders and India can't stop us. But at the same time, of course, because of how visible this is, and we are looking at it now from space and satellite imagery, and we are seeing this, it is clearly telling the rest of the world, and India in particular, that this is now territory that China has claimed, and there's very little that you can try and do about it.
Sim, what can you see in the village itself? What does it show you?
So in the village itself, I think we are seeing quite a normal, regular civilian village. One interesting thing that I noted was the presence of vehicles throughout the village and along the roads leading to and from it, which to me suggests that perhaps the village might already be inhabited. There might already be civilians actually living there. Of course, alternatively, this mobility could be related to construction crews, but if we look at the construction pattern of this village, I think it's quite possible that it might actually already be an active inhabited village.
All right. Well, Sim, it's great speaking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. We're going to take a short break, but once again, for the benefit of our viewers, this Chinese village or enclave, call it what you like, is on territory that India doesn't hold. It is, however, Indian territory in the sense that it lies south of the international boundary between India and China, and we have not for a second given up our claim, even in those areas which China continues to illegally occupy. A lot of people suggest that, look, even in Aksai Chin, China can do whatever it wants, and they can construct the villages. We aren't complaining then. Why are we complaining or raising an issue now? The distances over here are far less than the distances that you see in Aksai Chin. That's one of many reasons. So therefore, Indian posts and Indian habitation is actually much closer to enclaves like this, which China has illegally constructed on our territory, than it is perhaps in larger parts of Aksai Chin. There's also the other entire issue of the 2015 border agreement between India and China, where if you settle a population in a particular area, or you have a settled population, that means that the sentiments of that border population needs to be respected. In this case, the Chinese have come onto our land. They've been there for a while, but they've now constructed a village. If they settle that village, when there are boundary talks between India and China, they can turn around and actually say, look, this is our village or enclave, it's populated, therefore it is settled, and therefore this is our land. Is that what India wants to confront? We'll take a short break, more coming up.